My great pleasure and privilege to thank the citizens, the business owners, the current and past management teams, and all those who come to Troy to experience our world-class shopping, our great dining and entertainment opportunities, who have helped make it possible for Troy to receive the honor of being named CNN Money Magazine's 26th best place to live in the United States of America and the #1 place to live in the state of Michigan. Good job, Troy. The following presentation is ceremonial only. The actual Troy City Council meeting will begin after I retake the chair. Please join me in welcoming the Honorable Mayor for a Day, Mr. Felix Liang, our 6th and final Mayor for the Day essay contest winner. If you'll join us, Felix. Mr. Liang is rather shy and has a voice that he hasn't quite learned how to project yet, but we wanted to have him sit in the chair. He's going to read his essay, and then we'll go ahead and say invocation and Pledge of Allegiance. Go ahead, Felix.
Citizen participation in government is important because they can vote to tell the government something. Citizens can vote for the candidates they like. Citizens can vote for new laws. Citizens can help the government with things. The communication between citizens and government should be good so the government will know what citizens want.
Thank you, Felix. We have not been joined by the pastor who is scheduled to give the invocation this evening. Mayor Pro Tem McGinnis defers to Councilman Fleming. If you'd like to join us in standing, please.
Let us pray. Our most gracious Heavenly Father, we just thank you so much for this beautiful day that you provided, and for this wonderful country that we live in, the freedoms that we enjoy, Father, and this wonderful city, Father. Help us not to take these freedoms of religion and freedom to meet in a public place for granted, Lord. And we just give you thanks for that, Lord. Now, Father, we just pray your blessings upon this meeting. May the words we speak be words that you would have us to say. Give us the right attitude and the right spirit throughout this meeting. We'll just give you the honor and the glory for it. These things we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge of Allegiance, Felix. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Felix, if you'd like to take a seat. The Troy City Council meeting for August 27th is about to begin. Bang the gavel, please. There you go. Thank you, Felix.
Thank you.
Thank you. Felix was the only Mayor for a Day contest winner who actually said he really wouldn't like to be the mayor. I can't, for myself, imagine why anyone wouldn't want this great honor. Thank you so much, Felix, for your participation. The August 27th Troy City Council meeting is now called to order. Let's see. First, we have no certificates of recognition, or special presentations, no carryover items. There is a public hearing that is scheduled. Oh, I'm sorry. Roll call. Mrs. Bittner, please.
Mayor Daniels?
Here.
Councilmember Campbell?
Here.
Councilmember Fleming?
Here.
Councilmember Henderson?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem McGinnis?
Here.
Councilmember Slater?
Here.
Councilmember Teets?
Here.
Quorum present. Again, we'll move to a public hearing. Attorney Bloom, would you like to announce what the situation is at hand?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. For item E1, which is the conditional rezoning application, we were notified today that the property has changed hands. And so in your packet, you have something that is an agreement that is signed by someone who is not actually the current owner of the property. However, it was advertised as a public hearing, so to the extent that there are persons here who wish to move forward, Your Honor, you may wish to have them address the council, you may wish to entertain them, so you can open the public hearing. However, we do have a request, and it is a yellow page here, where they are asking that this matter be postponed until such time as they advise city management of their desire to proceed with this item.
Okay, thank you very much. We will open the public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on this issue? Yes, sir.
I represent the company.
If you'll please approach the podium, announce your name, please.
My name is Greg Lyons. I'm the Director of Facilities and Real Estate for the company.
Speak the
Oh, I'm sorry.
microphone. Yes, thank you.
Can you hear me better? Okay. And I represent Source HOV, and we're the new owners of the property at 1250 West 14 Mile Road. And we closed today. We understand that there are a lot of opportunities in Troy. We were renters in Troy at 1305 Stephenson Highway for 10 years. We're investors in Troy at 1250 West 14 Mile Road, and we're not exactly sure we want to be developers in Troy yet. So we wanted to take some time to review the conditions of the agreement and the articles that the city incorporates for rezoning, and we appreciate your considerations.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Nice to meet you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak on this issue? Public hearing is now closed, and we'll postpone this until a later date when the new owners feel comfortable about bringing it forward again.
Mayor?
Thank you very much.
Mayor? Mayor, I'm sorry, you would actually need to vote to postpone it because it was an announced public hearing and we've already had a speaker on the topic.
Okay, so we need someone to move the resolution or just vote?
Move to postpone and then second.
Postpone, second? I'll move to postpone this issue. Is there a second?
Support. I support.
Mayor, I'm sorry, just for clarification, it's to move to postpone until such time as the property owners have advised city management of their desire to proceed with the same, correct?
Okay, yes.
Thank you.
I'll move to postpone as spoken by our attorney.
Supported.
Seconded by Councilman Henderson. Discussion? Vote, please, Mrs. Bittner.
Mayor Daniels?
Yes?
Councilmember Campbell?
Yes.
Councilmember Fleming?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem McGinnis?
Yes.
Councilmember Slater?
Yes.
Councilmember Teets?
Yes.
Motion passes. We'll now move to public comments. As a reminder, I'd like to restate, the audience should be aware that all comments are to be directed to the council rather than to city administration or back to the audience. There's a timer on the city council table in front of the mayor's chair that turns yellow when there's 1 minute of speaker time remaining and turns red when the speaker's time is up. In order to make the meeting more orderly and out of respect, please do not clap during the meeting, and please do not use expletives or make derogatory or disparaging comments about any one person or group. If you do, there may be immediate consequences, including having the microphone turned off, being asked to leave the meeting, and/or the deletion of speaker comments for any rebroadcast of the meeting. Speakers should also be careful to avoid saying anything that would subject them to civil liability, such as slander or defamation. Please avoid these consequences and voluntarily assist us in maintaining the decorum befitting this great city. First in line is Ralph Korber. Mr. Korber? Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. I come with really great news this morning, or this evening. Money Magazine has named Troy, Michigan, as number 26 of the 100 best cities to live in, and we're number 1 in the state of Michigan. And Troy has been rated the safest city in Michigan for 10 of the past 14 years, thanks to our great police department and its detectives and officers. The text of the writing says, like many places near Detroit, Troy suffered the recession, but good times seem to be back. Auto companies' profits are rising, and formerly vacant office space in Troy is filling up. Detroit's woes mean housing in the area is a bargain. The median home price is $166,000, and the property taxes are ultra low. That's a pretty good deal for a city that has been rated the safest city in Michigan for 10 of the last 14 years. The city has a great schools and the best community sports program in the state. So each of us here in this room can echo the quality of life and the safety that we enjoy in our city. And we can certainly identify other positives that we have in our city, in our lifestyle, and the positives in our economy. Thank you to each of you for what you have done as a personal contribution to further our great city.
Thank you very much. M.L. Geiger? Mr. Geiger? Good evening.
One night last week, one of my neighbors, the night before trash pickup day, put out his recyclables, his rubbish, yard waste, but he also put out a used dishwasher. Well, the next morning when I was doing front yard work, when the trash people came by, I asked them, where is that dishwasher going to go? And the answer was landfill. So I called the city refuse department and asked what was the disposition, and the answer was landfill. So I asked the lady, could I speak with your manager, please? She said he would call back, but 3 or 4 hours later, she called back with a message that there are fewer used appliances put out now than there used to be. It's been longer than I can remember that I have seen the big open bed truck of Tringali go around the neighborhood on trash day to pick up the appliances and take them to the SACWA for recycling and disposable that way. So, but the other part of the message was SACWA will separate the things. I wasn't sure of that, so I went to SACWA to find out the facts. And the fact is, if the pickup truck filled its load with rubbish, and then after it was completely compacted, backtrack to pick up the used appliances, and then when they go to SACWA, deposit that item on the west side of the south building where you and I can leave appliances for disposal, then they would dump their load. But once it's compacted, goodbye, it goes to the landfill. It is my position here to request that the city send some a person with authority to meet with the contractor Tringali and the SACWA people to get a common understanding of the facts and then establish a workable, executable plan to reconstruct and restore Troy appliance recycling to the level that it once was.
Thank you. James Savage. Good evening, Mr. Savage.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, City Council. I don't think I'm going to get through these 3 pages. The most important issue facing Troy in the next few months is a ridiculous, ill-conceived recall petition. We have seen a parade of petition supporters with their personal attacks, but none of them have dealt with the issues honestly. The people we haven't heard from on this issue is our elected officials, the council. 3 of you voted against the transit centre. Does that mean that all 3 of you should be recalled? Is voting one's conscience a subject for recall? I think the transit centre project is bad for Troy. But do I think the council members who voted for it should be recalled? Of course not. This whole concept is utterly ridiculous. The supporters of the recall seem to have a double standard regarding freedom of speech. I think my freedom of speech is disappearing. They think it's okay to come in here and verbally abuse and insult our mayor and members of our community, but we have to watch every word and not be insensitive to someone's feelings. To declare that the homosexual lifestyle can be dangerous brings condemnation from every part of the globe. It was the council meeting of December the 5th, 2011, that homosexuals from all over North America seemed to depend on our city hall. That same weekend, in the Detroit News, an article appeared showing the connection between homosexual lifestyle and AIDS. Everyone should read this, and I have copies for the council and staff, and enough for everybody in the room. I'm going to pass these to the clerk and hope that the council has everybody read that. When I went into the service, we were lectured intensively on the dangers of venereal disease and how to avoid it. The military thought it was their obligation to inform us on what we could be getting into. Now, in this enlightened age, we hide from our young people for fear of being insensitive. And we hide these facts because we're all afraid to talk about it. We should be shouting it from the rooftops. And now I would like each member of council to state where they stand on this recall, and very briefly, why. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Savage. Linda Kaima? Is it Kaima? Good evening.
Good evening, Council, and thank you for pronouncing my name properly. I'm here once again to try and get some understanding of the intent and purpose of some of the messages we've heard from you, Ms. Daniels, and Council. First, I'd like to address a question I've asked numerous times of you, Ms. Daniels. That being, you indicated there was more than enough money for the library to stay open 7 days, and you said it was hidden. Again, how much and where? My other questions from July 23rd, 25th, and August 13th that have gone unanswered have been emailed to you again today, and I'd hope those answers would be forthcoming. Next, the distracted driving ordinance is on the agenda tonight. This disturbs me. Are the council people proposing this change unaware of the impact? There was enormous effort put into enacting this ordinance. It wasn't done without due diligence. According to the UN, in an article in the Global Post, by 2030, road accidents will be the 5th leading cause of deaths in the world. Already, it's the top killer of young people 15 to 29 years old, claiming more than 1.2 million lives every year. There's now a push to characterize distracted driving not just as an unsafe practice, but a lethal epidemic. The new project involves getting governments to enact anti-distracted driving laws and changing individual driver behavior. Ray LaHood, Secretary of Transportation, described the mounting death toll as, quote, the least recognized health safety crisis of the 21st century, end quote. Did you know that by 2030, road accidents would kill more people than HIV/AIDS, diabetes, malaria, and tuberculosis? Distracted driving is a significant public health problem and has the potential to become an even larger problem than drunk driving. It's not just cell phones and texting. Quote, distracted driving is any activity that could divert a person's attention away from the primary task of driving, end quote, according to distraction.gov, a federal government website devoted to distracted driving. According to NHTSA, in a 2010 study, distracted driving played a part in 11% of the almost 31,000 fatal traffic accidents that occurred in 2009, and 20% of the more than 2.2 million auto accident injuries. The study goes on to note, however, that the potential distraction distractions facing drivers include many things besides cell phone conversations and text messaging. Other possible distractions while behind the wheel include such things as the car stereo, rubbernecking at an accident, applying makeup, nail polish, shaving, eating, drinking, reading, including maps, using a navigation system, watching a video, etc. Many of the distractions are activities most people would not consider a problem. Quote, thumping on the dashboard or playing with something in your car, trying to read, distracted driving, goes beyond the cell phone, end quote, said Teresa Leinhop, registered nurse, director of trauma services at Truman Medical Center in Kansas City. Anytime you take your eyes off the road, you're distracted, even if you're talking to your kids in the back seat. This change should not be about an individual's desire to continue to do business as usual from his vehicle and use his ideologies to support the same. Our ordinance should be considered preventative medicine. It especially serves to educate and protect young drivers before something catastrophic happens. It makes all drivers think twice about their behaviors behind the wheel. If this change is implemented, it would be like thumbing our noses at those who worked so hard to implement the same, not to mention going backward as a community rather than forward. Isn't our motto, Troy, the city of tomorrow, today? Lastly, I'd like to share an experience I had recently. It renewed my faith in the community of Troy. We held a fundraiser to help the Recall Janice Daniels campaign. What was heartwarming was the people who came together at this event. It had nothing to do with winning or losing, Republican or Democrat, race, gay, straight. It was all about working toward a common goal, a goal that was so important to those attending and others, that being to restore the fine reputation of the city, to return harmony and cohesiveness to our community, and to continue to have Troy be the welcoming city that it is. We've always had our arms open until the November election when the doorstep to Troy was darkened. I'm proud to be a resident of this fine city and to be neighbors with those concerned with the reputation and continued development of the community. Thank you, and now, Ms. Daniels, you can mispronounce my name.
Thank you. That concludes the number of people who have signed up to speak. Is there anyone in the audience that would like an opportunity to speak? If not, the public comment section is concluded. We have response and reply to public comments. Councilman Slater?
Maybe if I could just get the city to take a look at Mr. Geiger's concerns and see if we could take a look at that and see where we're at with that. I'd appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, I wonder if the council wants to take a 5-minute break. This is typically where we do, but it seems like this has been quite a fast beginning. If we can just move forward. Yeah. Okay, good. I agree. We do have a postponed item, and that's the revision to the 2011-2012 City Council Rules of Procedure that was previously moved by Councilman Fleming and seconded by Mayor Pro Tem McGinnis. Should we use that as our format and just go to discussion? Or, okay, very good. Councilman Fleming, would you like to start the discussion?
Excuse me. Do we need a motion to approve this first?
There's already an open motion because it was moved and seconded at the last meeting, so you can go ahead into discussion.
That's fine. Thank you. I've reviewed these council rules of procedure. I have no problem with them as they're written. I'm in agreement with them.
Councilman Campbell?
Yes, we'd like to, I wonder if we can make a motion to, I guess, amend the rules. We have a couple of things coming up under item L1 and L2, which may or may not affect how we pass on the rules or if they become part of the rules. I'd like to see if we can move those items up in front of this so we can talk about it once and vote on the rules with everything included. If there's no objection.
A second? Do we need a second?
You could do it two different ways. You could either table this till after the discussion of the council referrals, or you could move the council referrals up to in front of this item.
We table this till after
council referrals. Okay. So then the motion would be to table the postponed item till after the council referral discussion.
Okay, and second? Support. Moved by Councilman Campbell, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem McGinnis to table this issue until after council referral. Discussion? A vote, please, Mrs. Bittner?
Councilmember Campbell?
Yes.
Councilmember Fleming?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem McGinnis?
Yes.
Councilmember Slater?
Yes.
Councilmember Teetz?
Yes.
Mayor Daniels?
Yes. Motion passes. We now move to regular business. There are no mayoral appointments. There is a council appointment. Mayor Pro Tem McGinnis, you have the floor.
Resolved that Troy City Council hereby appoints the following nominated person to serve on the Historic District Commission. One term, it expires May 15th, 2015. Timothy McGee.
Second.
Support.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem McGinnis, seconded by Councilman Fleming. Discussion. A vote, please, Mrs. Bittner.
Councilmember Fleming?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem McGinnis?
Yes.
Councilmember Slater?
Yes.
Councilmember Teetz?
Yes.
Mayor Daniels?
Yes.
Councilmember Campbell?
Yes.
Motion passes. Congratulations, Mr. McGee. There are no mayoral nominations and no city council nominations. There is a request for a closed session as permitted by MCL 15.268 F and H, MCL 15.243 G and K. Could someone please move the resolution forward?
Madam Mayor, I'll move the resolution as printed.
Second.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Teetz, seconded by Councilman Slater. Discussion? A vote, please, Mrs. Bittner.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem McGinnis?
Yes.
Councilmember Slater?
Yes.
Councilmember Teetz?
Yes.
Mayor Daniels?
Yes.
Councilmember Campbell?
Yes.
Councilmember Fleming?
Yes.
Motion passes. We'll meet in closed session after the conclusion of the agenda items. Item I4, application regarding specially designated merchant and Class C liquor license for Musis Taverna. There are two resolutions. If someone would please like to move one or both of them forward.
Madam Mayor.
Second.
Second.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem McGinnis, seconded by Councilman Slater.
Is that, I'm sorry.
How did you want
Mayor Pro Tem?
to proceed?
Oh, I was moving it. I just...
Both together,
Yes,
A
I'm
and
going to
B?
move A and B, yes.
Okay, and seconded by Councilman Slater. Discussion? A vote, please, Mrs. Bittner.
Mayor Pro Tem McGinnis?
Yes.
Councilmember Slater?
Yes.
Councilmember Teetz?
Yes.
Mayor Daniels?
Yes.
Councilmember Campbell?
Yes.
Councilmember Fleming?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Motion passes. Item I5, proposed amendment to distracted driving ordinance. If someone would please move the resolution forward.
I would move to this resolution as printed.
Okay.
Support.
Moved by Councilman Henderson, supported by Councilman Fleming. Discussion? Councilman Campbell?
Yeah, I just a little troubled that you've heard from other people about this. We've got, some residents have been calling, but yet we've yet to have one resident from Troy come up in front of us and say this is a bad rule. Not one person. We haven't got emails from anybody. There's no editorial. There's no protest. Our city attorney has said that this law fits well within the constraints. Our police department have stood there and gave us all kinds of data and told us that it's something that they want to use, that they need to use. It's a tool for them that they use at their discretion. And it's just, and other cities are calling us to ask us to copy the same thing. So I guess I'm really kind of confused of why we're trying to fix something when it's not really broken. And it appears that this is happening because we have one councilman who has a real problem with this, a personal problem. He doesn't like the police having any jurisdiction to make their own choices. And I guess I'm really confused. And we have another councilman who, I don't know what his objections are, other than the fact he wasn't here the last time to voted down. So I don't know whether he wants another kick at the can or exactly what's going on, but I think this council was elected to support the wants and needs of the people of Troy. And it just doesn't seem on this one that we're really doing it. We're really hitting the wants and needs of a couple people. So, I mean, we may not win this vote. I would hope all of you would vote against this, but for sure when it comes to my voice will be no for the people of Troy and also for the support of the police department.
Discussion? Councilman Fleming?
Mayor, I have plenty of objections, a number of objections going back to when this ordinance was first on the table. But, and I've had people supporting the elimination. And just to be clear for the public, we're not eliminating the entire distracted driving ordinance. Those things that are listed by the state as distracted driving continue to be listed as distracted driving. The ordinance continues to cover that. it seems that people are misunderstanding that we're getting rid of the whole ordinance. We're getting rid of one section, Section 3, Paragraph 3 of distracted driving, which is like an all other category. And I believe that the police have ample laws now and reasons for pulling people over without using that catch-all distracted driving. You're already illegal if you're texting, you're using electronic devices, but this is like a catch-all category, and that's the only paragraph we are eliminating. It's not the whole distracted driving. I support the distracted driving ordinance. It's that one paragraph that I was opposed to in the beginning, and I continue to be opposed to it, and there are a number of people that approach me that agree with that position.
Mayor?
Councilman Henderson?
Yeah, I echo the comments that Councilman Fleming made, and also want to say this is not because I want business as usual in my automobile, as was stated here. As a result of the ordinance, I also have a Bluetooth, and I use that when I do business so that I can free my hands of a cell phone. I don't text and drive. And those are the two primary things of concern that almost every report about distracted driving seem to hone in on. And I also object to a catch-all portion of an ordinance that wants to govern every conceivable thing that could happen inside an automobile. And that's my main reason for championing this.
Madam Mayor.
Mayor Pro Tem McGinnis?
I just wanted to go on record again. Obviously, we've had this conversation now for a few meetings to make sure that everybody was up to speed and had the same information that we were privy to when we made this decision to enact the ordinance. So my reasons for not supporting a change will be the same, but I wanted to make sure that they were clear. There was a lot of work and effort that went into not only putting together the research that was necessary for the council to see that this was something that our community would benefit from, and it was something that would ensure our community was a safer place than it was without it. I think since the time that it's been enacted, it's been used responsibly. We have not had, to my knowledge, anyone that's come forward to us here on council and indicated anything different, and I think the numbers also support that in terms of the number of tickets that have been issued since this ordinance has been enacted. So barring some sort of issue that we need to deal with that's going to necessitate a change, I think that the research is there, the numbers are there to support that this is a concern not only in our community, but in every community. We've used it wisely. We've publicized a very big change, I think, very well, and it's allowed us to have a smooth transition to get from point A to point B, point A being where we were before, and point B being where we were after this ordinance has taken effect. So I don't see a need. We've had a lot of positive feedback from the community, other communities supporting this. So I don't have a reason to make this change. And I'm a little concerned because I'm not hearing how we're going to address the education piece again, the component again, to make sure that people are aware that this has changed again. I think in terms of a catch-all, I would have to disagree with that statement because it's not a catch-all. If you read what it says, it very specifically articulates what this distracted behavior is that a police officer would be looking for, in addition to the fact that they have to not only determine that this behavior has taken place, but that this behavior by someone behind the wheel has affected their ability to drive their vehicle in a safe manner. So I think it's very clear that it's not just throwing in the kitchen sink in terms of allowing them to pull someone over or issue them a ticket for this. And I think that the purpose of making the streets a little bit safer for people to drive, bike, walk on, this accomplishes that. So I can't support changing that, especially in light of how well we've seen this utilized by the police department and how well I think that we've done in terms of communicating the change to the public and having them have an opportunity to benefit from it. So I can't support that.
Councilman Slater, there are a couple of the council people that haven't spoken yet. I want to make sure that they don't want to because we want to follow the rules properly. Councilman Teets, did you have anything to add to it? He has to wait for everyone to speak second. Yeah, aren't we all supposed to have an opportunity to speak first? And then
I don't believe Councilmember Slater, I don't believe, has spoken on this topic yet.
My sincerest apologies.
Nice try. I can't support this either. for a number of reasons. And I think when you change a law, you have to do it for the good of the community, okay? And I think that's why we enacted this, for the good of the community. And I hate to put Chief Mayor on the spot, but could I just ask him a couple questions? City Manager, would that be okay?
Chief Mayor,
That would be fine.
if you'd like to come to the podium.
I know I didn't talk to you beforehand, but the thing that concerns me about going backwards on this law is, and if you could just, my understanding is that the accidents that we have in Troy, 3/4, my recollection, the data that was supplied to us, 3/4 of the accidents that happen in Troy are a result of distracted driving. Is that your recollection too?
I am sorry to say I cannot answer that at this time.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I got all the packet of information, and I didn't
okay. That's
prepare
okay.
for that.
I should have talked to you beforehand, but that's...
I apologize.
That's my recollection, and that to me is a safety issue, and I think sometimes we're our own worst enemy when we try to put every single thing in a paragraph that we can think of for distracted driving. And I think this has been to our detriment to do this, because we tried to single out what could be distracted driving, and some people have taken it to the extreme, where our whole reason for doing this was to make sure that people have at least one hand on the steering wheel. Is that correct?
That's correct.
You know, to keep people from doing 2 or 3 things at once in a car, not doing one thing in a car, as long as they got control of that vehicle. And I think there's been a misrepresentation that this paragraph is a catch-all. And you don't see this as a catch-all, I wouldn't think, do you?
No, we get the intent of this and what we've articulated to the officers, and where you see with the enforcement levels on this are that the officers have some other driving that they see, something that leads them to believe that there's a problem. They stop the vehicle. They discover that it's because of distracted driving. We gave some of the examples in there, people eating cereal with holding a bowl in one hand and a spoon in the other, driving with their knees while they read a paper, a book, do things on a computer. That's the intent. That's what we're looking at. And then we've discussed discretion, officer discretion, and we've discussed the fact that there has to be other behavior. Now, can I revisit your point on the number of accidents?
Sure.
It's a logical conclusion that things like when people follow too closely and rear end another vehicle, that's what one of our number one accidents are. That's from people not paying attention when they're driving. They follow too closely, they do things. So within that, you're going to have things like the distracted driving. I just don't have that data off the top of my head for the exact number that you're quoting.
I have it off the top of my head.
I wouldn't argue with you. I'm uncomfortable giving the number
That's
without
okay.
looking at it.
I appreciate that.
Certainly.
You know, I don't want to lose this section, you know, because whether a council member believes it or not, I think there should be discretion on the street when it comes to certain things, and I think there should be discretion in this area. But I would try to encourage my colleagues to, instead of throwing that old saying, throwing the baby out with the bathwater, that maybe we can come together to try and work something out here that would possibly be okay with everybody, because the intent, I know the intent. The intent is to make sure that people that are driving down the highways have control of their vehicle and have one hand on the steering wheel. And I think it's been misrepresented that this is a catch-all, when in fact it's not a catch-all. But what we tried to do is list some things, and we kind of went maybe too far in listing some things. So I would like to postpone this item and get together with the police department and members of this council and see if we can come up with something that you don't see as a catch-all and that the police department can help write along with the law department and keep the intent of our distracted driving ordinance for where it was intended, okay? When this first came out, I saw people were laughing about it. Oh, you can't eat a hamburger anymore in a car. Oh, you can't drink coffee in the car anymore. That is not the intent. That never was the intent. So I'm going to make a motion to postpone this item and have, whether we put a committee together, or I would like to see a meeting between the police department and the law department and members of this council to try and come together to keep the intent of the distracted driving ordinance intact.
Did you have a date certain that you wanted that postponement to be until?
Until the committee is satisfied that they have reworked the language to the...
It's postponed indefinitely?
No, until after the committee meets and we can recommend some future language.
Okay. Is there a second? Support. Moved by Councilman Slater, seconded by Councilman Campbell. Discussion? Vote, please. Oh, I'm sorry. Councilman Teets?
I guess I didn't quite follow what. So, in your ideal world, what would be the takeaway, or what would be accomplished after a committee meeting and so forth?
From my perspective, to keep the integrity of the intent of the third paragraph, and that was that you keep one hand on the wheel. You don't have to list every single thing, but indicate the intent. The intent is to contain control of the vehicle. You don't have to list everything, I don't think, because I think that's where the confusion comes into play. And I think we can get some language that maybe we all can live with.
Councilman Fleming?
Everybody else spoken that wants to speak?
No, this is a new motion.
I'm not in favor of that, but what I want to do for everybody's benefit is to read the ordinance as what distracted driving means and still the law in Troy. Number one, still the law after this if this passes. The operator of a motor vehicle's physical manipulation of any two-way wireless electronic communication device used for dialing numbers or scrolling or typing or entering multiple letters, numbers, symbols, or other text, or the sending, receiving, and reading of any non-voice data in the device while the motor vehicle is in motion on any highway or street or place open to the general public within the city of Troy, or paragraph 2, also a violation and distracted driving, as I'm reading here, and still the law in Troy. The operator of a motor vehicle's physical manipulation or handling of any wireless entertainment or electronic communication device for the purpose of speaking into or listening to voice data while the motor vehicle is in motion on any highway or street or place open to the general public within the city of Troy. Those two things are still distracted driving. We're not eliminating those. Those are still there. Here's the paragraph that we proposing to eliminate with this ordinance, with this change tonight. Is paragraph 3, which reads, any action by the driver of a motor vehicle that diverts his or her attention resulting in the failure or use due care and caution in the safe operation of a motor vehicle while the vehicle is in motion on any highway or street or place open to the general public within the city of Troy. Such action shall include, but is not limited to, eating, reading, writing, performing personal hygiene, grooming, physical interaction with pets, passengers, or unsecured cargo, and is done in a manner that prohibits the driver from maintaining direct physical control of the motor vehicle steering mechanism with at least one hand that is free of all other objects and used entirely to form a controlled grip on the steering mechanism. Now, this paragraph 3, the last one I just wrote, is the one we're proposing to take out, not the first two. We still have a strong distracted driving ordinance in Troy with this resolution.
A vote, please, Mrs. Bittner, on the postponement.
Councilmember Slater?
Yes.
Councilmember Teets?
Yes.
Mayor Daniels?
Yes?
Councilmember Campbell?
Yes.
Councilmember Fleming?
No?
Councilmember Henderson?
No.
Mayor Pro Tem McGinnis?
Yes.
Motion passes. Motion will be moved or postponed until we have a chance to put a committee together and revise the paragraph. Yes, Attorney Blum?
Mayor, just for clarification, because subcommittees are prohibited by council members, I'm assuming that you would have this occur in a study session format so that all the council members can have some input.
Yes.
Thank you. That concludes our regular business. We now move to consent agenda items. Are there any items that need to be removed from the agenda for discussion? Could we have someone move the resolution forward, please?
Madam Mayor.
Mayor Pro Tem McGinnis?
Resolved that Troy City Council hereby approves all items on the consent agenda as presented.
Support.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem McGinnis, supported by Councilman Slater. Discussion? I just want to take an opportunity to thank Bill Hodery for providing me with an answer to a question that I had regarding the cost override on one of the resolutions within the consent agenda. A vote, please, Mrs. Bittner?
Councilmember Teets?
Yes.
Mayor Daniels?
Yes?
Councilmember Campbell?
Yes.
Councilmember Fleming?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem McGinnis?
Yes.
Councilmember Slater?
Yes.
Motion passes. Under the memorandum or future council agenda items, there are two announcements of public hearings. One of them is the conditional rezoning application, file number CR 007, proposed Charter One Bank Branch, 125 Stevenson Highway, and 1250 West 14 Mile Road, Section 35, from O Office District to B Integrated Industrial and Business District. And no, that was the public hearing that we did not have. I apologize. My computer is on the wrong line item.
Okay.
So we have two public hearings.
Mayor, would you like me to read it?
Announcement for the Industrial Development District and Industrial Facilities Exemption Certificate for Alternative Automotive Technologies, 1225 East Maple on September 24th of 2012. An announcement of the public hearing for planned unit development, Big Beaver Center, formerly the Monarch. Planned unit development, north side of Big Beaver Road between Alpine and McClure, Section 20, currently zoned PUD 004 and R-1B, which is one family residential districts, on September 10th, 2012. We now move to council referrals. And we have Council Member McGinnis referral regarding proposed draft of the City of Troy appointee code of ethics. Mayor Pro Tem McGinnis?
Sure, thank you, Mayor. I think part of the reason that there was a desire to move our proposed amendments to the rules of procedure to follow some of these referrals is just simply because they reference the rules. And this is my proposed appointee code of ethics. It's the same thing that we discussed when we were at the study session. At that time, we weren't allowed to vote on it, but it appeared that there was consensus from the rest of the council members that they would be agreeable to include this code of ethics that would be given to all board and committee members at the timeline that's designated here in our proposed rule changes. So basically, I think if we're going to be approving the rules here that have been provided by the law department, you'll see that now under 2 code of ethics, there's a B that's been added, and that basically indicates that this Board of Committee Code of Ethics should be reviewed in November of each calendar year, and that all board and committee members agree upon their appointment that they're going to be abiding by this Code of Ethics. And for anyone that may not have been following that study session, basically this Code of Ethics that I had created for our board and committee members almost exactly mirrors what we sign ourselves as council members. There were a few tweaks that I made, and also council members made, so that it was more applicable to the responsibilities of a board and committee member, but it was nothing really out of the ordinary and nothing different than what council members would agree to sign. So I don't know if there's a way for us to vote on this in addition to voting on the proposed amendments to rules of procedure tonight, if that's something that would be recommended, or if we need to bring it back for an official vote. I know it's under referrals here, but I think the main goal was just to keep the momentum going. I see we're going to talk about the proposed amendments, so I want to make sure that this follows suit, because I think it's going to make more sense to the public too to see them both together.
If you wanted to vote to adopt that today, you could just suspend the rules and add the resolution to adopt this Board and Committee Code of Ethics and then vote on that as well. Or you could just not vote on it tonight and bring it back at another meeting. It's up to you.
Mayor?
Councilman Fleming?
Oh, were you finished?
I was just going to attempt to move it, but go ahead.
What I would prefer to do, and I see no problem as it is, I like it, I think it's legitimate, but a conversation I had with the city attorney just prior to this meeting is what I would like to see is move this to the next meeting, but at the next meeting, what I'd also like to see is what code of ethics that we have for all city employees, staff and non-staff. And I think in some employment agreement we have this, but what I don't want to do is to pass a code of ethics for people that we appoint that's stronger or more restrictive than the code of ethics that we have for our own employees. So I don't have the code of ethics for the employees, and this is something that was brought to my attention this afternoon, so I'm bringing it up and just suggesting that we do wait until the next meeting, but at the next meeting maybe we could see, and maybe the city attorney could address this, because I'm sure we have a code of ethics. It's probably contractual. I'd just like to see that in writing as well for all city employees.
Attorney Bloom?
Mayor and Councilman Fleming did come up to me before just as the meeting was started, and I did have a chance to look at Chapter 4 is where the Employees Code of Conduct is located of our city ordinances. It is there. There are also some provisions in the charter. There are also some provisions in state law that govern city employees. I can assure you that the code of conduct for the employees is at least as comprehensive as the one that's proposed for the board and committee members. I think it's much more so, but certainly at a minimum, it's the same amount.
Okay. Councilman Slater?
Did everybody?
Yes.
Okay. Could I ask the city attorney a couple more questions?
Of course.
Doesn't every city employee have to sign for a handbook?
Yes.
And isn't that handbook about this thick? And doesn't it cover just about every code of conduct that you could think of?
There are multiple locations that govern employees. One of them is in Chapter 4. One of them is the handbook. Other ones are depending on which department you're in.
And doesn't the police department have books this thick that they have to sign for that control their conduct, and they have to take an oath to the state of Michigan to uphold the Constitution? The fire department has books this thick that they have to adhere to. I think there is a multitude of documentation that the city employees have signed that is way beyond what we're asking somebody that sits on a committee to sign. I don't even think that should be an issue.
Councilman Henderson?
Mayor, is it appropriate now to ask questions about specific lines in this document, or is that
I
for...
think we're in discussion.
As I read through this, and I know we poured over it the other night in the study session, but, you know, when it came in the packet, I went through each line again just to make sure I fully understand them, and all are basic common sense. And I'm not sure they really even fit into a code of ethics necessarily. Maybe even renaming it to guidelines for volunteerism. But the one that sticks out to me is the 6th bullet point. And it states, render all decisions based on the available facts and independent judgment rather than succumbing to the influence of individuals or special interest groups, which is fine and good. I think we all strive to be that and to do that. What I think the gray area for me is if an organization, we'll call it a nameless organization in the community, stands behind and supports any particular thing like a transit center or a community center or a water park, and if we as council members or a committee member votes in support of that, what slippery slope are we headed down should somebody say, well, you took your guidance and advice from that particular organization? And that just bothers me a little bit. You know, I'm not sure what the purpose for this entire document is. If somebody falls out of lockstep with this document, what are the ramifications? I would like to know the end game before I sign on to this particular document, and in specific, that particular paragraph.
Mayor Pro Tem McGinnis?
Well, to be honest with you, I didn't really take this effort to the nth degree, I think, in terms of what other communities do when they're addressing their code of ethics, whether it's for their council people or for their board and committee members. To be honest, in the research that I did, even so I felt comfortable bringing it up at a council meeting and having a discussion about it, I would say we're on the lenient end of things. There are many communities that have, much like we have other designated boards and committees, they have an ethics board that is a panel of members that is responsible for dealing with these conflicts that come up that we haven't sometimes been able to handle in terms of even having a discussion about it, because you're saying that things are common sense, and I agree. I tried to make this as non-controversial as possible by really sticking to things that I thought were common sense related. If I personally was going to present a project and not have to try to get buy-in from my colleagues so it's something that we could all support, I probably would have done things a little bit differently. I was trying to maybe start at the low end of things. I know that there have been instances that have occurred over the course of this year, but other years as well, where there may be something that comes up, and I'll speak on something that didn't occur this year, but when we were discussing all of the aspects of the library millage, and there were boards and committees within the city of Troy that were taking one person, or some people within that board and committee were taking a position where they were putting the name of that board and committee on literature that was going out to community members, taking a position on the library millage. And I don't know how you feel personally, but that was not right, and it wasn't right in the eyes of many people in the community that someone had made that decision to take a City of Troy board and committee's name and attach it to something like that, whether it's a political issue, whatever the case may be. And we had nothing in place to address it. And it ended up putting us all in a very uncomfortable position, because we had a ton of people coming to us and saying, what can you do to stop this? Whether it was other committee members or someone else that got the mailer and said, I can't believe that this committee took a position, or maybe it made someone vote or take some action based on that. So that was really the starting point for this being something that I thought was really important. And things that happened this year, the same thing. Whatever side you were on, or if you thought that the comments should have been allowed or not allowed, we didn't have a place to start a conversation from, because we didn't really have anything outlined. So, you know, we can make it what we want. I assume that if I came forward with an end goal of, I'm expecting that we're going to have this in place, and if they don't do this, these are going to be, you know, step X, Y, and Z, maybe at some point, some council, probably not ours, will get to that point if that's something that they decide to do. But I feel like, in part, this needs to be done so that the community feels that people that we're appointing to the boards and committees have some sort of accountability, that they've signed this and that these are things that they've agreed to follow, and that if there is an issue somewhere in the future, I'm hoping that there's not, we would at least have a place to start a conversation about whether or not that's appropriate for a board and committee to act that way. So I don't want to, I was trying not to get too detailed. What does that really mean? I was hoping that it would stay more common sense so that it was something that we could all buy into. But, you know, that's where I would like to start. And I guess really at this point, the council would take it on a case-by-case basis. You know, if there was some issue that rose to the level that there was public outcry or there was something that we as council members felt occurred and put the city in a bad light, that we would have something to take action based on. You know, that was kind of my goal. So I wasn't really anticipating on taking it a whole lot further at this point. I think it would be a step in the right direction for us. And that was really about as far as I got.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councilman Teets?
I'm not familiar with what happened in the past or this individual or group that did something that they represented themselves as being part of a board. Or I'm just asking for reference sake, because if that's the sort of thing that this would apply to, I think that would be relevant. Does anyone know the history? Because if that's an example of what you think this would apply to, I think that would be relevant to our discussion.
Mayor Pro Tem McInnes, do you have details?
Well, I'm not going to name names and rehash things at all, but I remember with specificity there was a particular board, and it's actually not a board that we have anymore, because we'd gone through restructuring and kind of tried to pare down to match up with the resources that we had from our staff and figure out which boards and committees were operating close to what they were enacted to do in the first place, which others may not really be as relevant anymore. So we did pare some down. This particular one is no longer operating. But when we had the library millage issue, several of them actually, and I don't remember specifically which election this was tied to, whether it was the independent library or it was the one that ultimately passed. But there was literature that went out that was against the millage, and there in the list of people that said that they were against the millage, whatever groups that may be or individuals, the Library Advisory Board was listed. And there was another one that we had, and I want to say, I can't remember, but it was the same issue. It was another board that we had, and the same thing happened, where the City of Troy, this board, is taking a position in one way or another, and when it came down to the rest of the group finding out that their name was even attached, not even that the council members didn't support it or say, yes, you have the permission to take a position on this. Other members within that board had no idea and would never have agreed to do that. So that was an issue that then you see something that comes in your mailbox that says, wow, this City of Troy board and or committee is taking this position on that. What's going on? In addition to the fact that you have another half of the group that's saying that that's not anything that they discussed at a meeting, nor would they have believed that they had the position to weigh in on. So I'm trying to use an example that is maybe a little bit out of things that have gone on with us as a council, because this is just, I think there have been a couple of things, but that I think is a good example of something that we should all probably be able to agree on, that is not something that we would condone, and it's not something that we're asking a board or committee member to do, or to, you know, say that they would be okay with someone else on their board and committee doing that.
Mayor Pro Tem McInnes, if I can ask, what would this document have done, or at the time when this issue came up? It seems like it's something that you might have mentioned in council referral and brought to the public's attention so that you could have an opportunity to point out the fact that this board was really only being represented by one person, what would this document have done at that time if it were in place when this person inaccurately advertised that the board he was on?
Well, here's how I envision it working. And again, I'm just speculating, so I can't say with certainty. But I think that on that issue and many other issues that have come to light where we get outcry from citizens, maybe it's one group of citizens, maybe it's a broad-based group of citizens, but I can say personally that when these issues have come to light and there's been something where people are not happy, where they don't think that that's an appropriate thing for a board and committee person to do, what are we going to do about it? And the response is, well, there's no rule in place, so there really isn't anything you can do about it. If there was something in place, we would have been able to say, this is a rule that's in place that we feel was broken. We need to make a decision one way or another as a council. At this point, we haven't had the opportunity to do that. So the issues kind of die, and I don't think that the people that feel that they've been offended by it or they don't think it's appropriate, that they're seeing us as ineffective because we don't even have the ability to address it. There have been things that have come up where I got direction that unless there was a movement to do something by council, it really can't be addressed because it's not going to go anywhere. And I just think that that's unfortunate. I don't think it sends a good message when the community or some part of the community is up in arms or outraged about something and they're getting a response of, well, there really isn't anything that we can do about it. I mean, there really isn't even a basis to have a discussion because they're not technically violating any rule anywhere except for a common sense rule. And common sense goes out the window sometimes in some of these situations. So that's all. It's a starting point. So I don't feel like, I'm helpless if there's an issue that needs to be addressed and I don't have a basis to even address it. So I mean, it's getting everyone on the same page. And I don't think it should be that hard if everyone can look at these and say they're really common sense, And so I don't know. To me, it's kind of like, let's just keep shooting at a moving target because we could agree today that these things are common sense, but in the heat of a moment when maybe you have a personal position on something, you're going to be a lot less likely to address something that may need to be addressed because it's against your personal opinion. And I think that having something that's in line where you can point to it wherever you stand on an issue and say, well, that's something that we agreed upon was important for us and the people that represent our community and for our council members. So, this is something that we need to address because it seems to be in violation of that. I mean, and it's really just leading to a conversation. I mean, there's nothing, no removal process in place, but I think it needs to be addressed. At this point, anytime anything has come up, even when I made comments about attendance or anything else, it was shot down because, well, it doesn't really, it's not a requirement. We don't need to drag people into it. I mean, it's kind of stifling the conversation, I think. And so that's my motivation, not to go on a witch hunt. I hope we don't really have to use this in that format, but it's probably good to know where I'm coming from.
Any other? Oh, I'm sorry, Councilman Fleming?
Anyone else want to speak, I think?
Councilman Campbell is the only one who hasn't had an opportunity to speak, so we're up to round 2 now.
Okay. Just to be clear here, because that was a lengthy explanation, I appreciate that, but as Dave Henderson, Councilman Henderson was saying, I'm interested in the end game here. If we had this point number 6, render all decision based on the available facts and independent judgment rather than succumbing to the influence of individuals or other special interest group, and we had this situation occurred with the library millage, what would we do with this information? How would it play out in the end game? Would we have those people come before the council and take them off the board of committee? Would it be a warning? What would it be? I think it's just a process here.
Mayor?
Attorney Bloom?
Yes, thank you. A couple of things. First of all, I think primarily what this document does is it provides education to all the board and committee members, and that's critical, that they know what the rules are. And sometimes you don't think of these things, and it's important to have this document, revisit it every year so that everyone knows ahead of time what is expected of board and committee members. As far as what can happen, again, it is an articulation of what is expected. Council does have some discretion if there's a violation of the rules, what is articulated as to be a code of conduct, then council does have the ability to invite that person back in front of you, and then council does have some authority. But of course, none of it could happen without a due process hearing, without notice, and all of that. So it's not going to result in an automatic removal, as Mayor Pro Tem McGinnis has indicated. This is probably not as stringent as many other ethics ordinances, but it is a start, and again, the primary value is the educational piece.
Okay.
I also have a problem with the, I'm sorry. Did someone want to speak? I'm sorry. I also have a problem with that, the provision that Councilman Henderson mentioned, rendered all decisions based upon the available facts and independent judgment rather than succumbing to the influence of individuals or special interest groups. That's very subjective. Whose decision is going to be made, whose opinion is going to be counted upon to say that the person who comes to the podium's decision was based upon available facts or an opinion of their friend. I think that comparing volunteer positions to paid positions is a little bit difficult to accept for me, because paid positions do have a duty to the employer to behave with a code of ethics. Maybe I wouldn't be as uncomfortable with this without that one provision, and if we called it a mission statement rather than a code of ethics, because I think we have a hard enough time finding good people that want to come forward and volunteer free of charge or free of any compensation to sit on the boards and committees and help us to look at the issues that are important to the city. Are they now? These are the people who have the most interest, the most involvement, and potentially the most value to us in rendering their opinion. If they have to feel uncomfortable about why they're saying what they're saying at the podium, I think that that's a stifling of free speech. I think it also is a stifling of the important information that we can glean from the people who care enough to volunteer for boards and committees. I think it's a very dangerous, slippery slope. If that one paragraph or that one clause were taken out, I think I would be comfortable with it, and I'd like to call it a mission statement rather than code of ethics. Councilman Henderson was behind you. I'm sorry.
Have you spoken?
He'll be next.
I'm just going to suspend the rules to get this thing going.
Okay. Well, just one last point. I do appreciate Councilwoman Mayor Pro Tem McGinnis's effort on this. As I said, everything is common sense, and it's right in line with what should happen in a committee. No question about it. What you had gone on about with regard to the situations at hand really fit into that number 2 category, and the second bullet point. And that's recognized that an individual board or committee member has no authority to act or speak on behalf of the Troy City Council or the City of Troy with respect to their committee. I completely concur with that. I think that is something we have to have teeth in. But again, that item number 6, to just use, just pull out an odd set of circumstances. Let's say somebody on a committee comes out and makes a motion to promote any particular project, and it's also one that's promoted by the Chamber of Commerce, for example, and somebody on the other side of that issue decides that they don't like it and they're going to make an example of that individual because he succumbed to recommendations by the Chamber of Commerce, or again, name any organization. What is to keep somebody from ruining that person's life in a volunteer position over something that he already probably agreed with, but now because somebody wants to make an example of him or her, and we've seen that, this particular paragraph is going to allow them to do that. And I have a hard time with that. So I would love this thing without that paragraph, or maybe a modification of that paragraph.
Councilman Teets?
Why don't we strike the aspect that says rather than succumbing to the influence of individuals or special interest groups? Is that a solution that could work for folks? That couldn't work for some folks. I guess if folks are making, if board appointees are making judgments based on facts, independent judgment, I kind of figured that it would, but okay, I'll withdraw it.
Councilman Slater,
I'd like to move to suspend the rules.
second. Moved by Councilman Slater, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem McGinnis to suspend the rules of procedure and to do what?
It would be to suspend the rules and add a resolution to the agenda. And
add?
You could just say to add the resolution, and then you add. Then the next vote would be for the resolution to move the Code of Ethics or pass the Code of Ethics, whatever.
So we wouldn't decide upon the Code of Ethics first?
This is
and then
not to
move
decide on the
add it?
Code of Ethics, no. This is to suspend the rules so that you can vote on the Code of Ethics.
Okay. Moved by Councilman Slater, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem McGinnis. Discussion? A vote, please, Mrs. Bittner?
Councilmember Campbell?
Yes.
Councilmember Fleming?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem McGinnis?
Yes.
Councilmember Slater?
Yes.
Councilmember Teets?
Yes.
Mayor Daniels?
Yes. Motion passes. Now we need a motion to vote
For the
on.
resolution, I believe if Mayor Pro Tem McGinnis has a resolution in mind regarding the,
Councilman Slater?
I'm sorry, but are we going to discuss
Get a motion. then
two?
discuss it.
you would,
The other two items of
Campbell's-
referral? Mhm.
the table item was after the discussion of the referral items, so both referral items could be discussed, then the tabled item could come up.
Yep.
To suspend the rules is to bring forth just the Code of Ethics resolution, so something like Troy City Council hereby, passes the Code of Ethics as presented, something like that, and then you'd vote on that, and then you could go into L2 and talk about that, and then it would be the tabled item.
Okay.
Okay.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem McGinnis.
I would move a resolution that hereby the Troy City Council approves the appointee Code of Ethics as presented.
Support.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem McGinnis, seconded by Councilman Slater. Discussion, I think we've discussed it enough. A vote, please.
Mayor.
Or did you wish to discuss? I'm sorry, Councilman Fleming?
Yeah. I can't vote on this. After all the discussion we had tonight on point number 6, I can in good conscience vote favorably in this. I can vote in good conscience with the amendment that Councilman Teets offered, which was to put a period on point number 6 to read, render all decisions based upon the available facts and independent judgment, and eliminate rather than succumbing to the influence of individuals or special interest groups. I think it's a great start, but I tend to agree we should leave off the second half of that point number 6.
So now we have another motion to amend.
Don't have a motion, that's discussion.
Could I?
Councilman Slater.
That's not the way I thought Councilman Teets was presenting it. I thought he was striking 6. So I don't have any problem with ending it at render all decisions based on available facts and independent judgment.
Councilman Teets.
Semicolon.
That is what the two of you said is what I was trying to express. My apologies.
Amended motion.
So we need a Councilman
That
Henderson.
satisfies me completely on this, so if we can get that.
I'll amend it to include striking after judgment and put the semicolon after judgment.
Support that.
Moved by Councilman Slater, supported by Councilman Fleming to amend the sentence, render all decisions based upon the available facts and independent judgment. Discussion. A vote, please, Mrs. Bittner.
Councilmember Fleming?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem McGinnis?
Yes.
Councilmember Slater?
Yes.
Councilmember Teets?
Yes.
Mayor Daniels?
Yes.
Councilmember Campbell?
Okay. Would someone like to move the resolution?
It's already been moved.
All right, already?
Just need to call the vote.
Okay. Vote on the amended resolution?
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem McGinnis?
Yes.
Councilmember Slater?
Yes.
Councilmember Teets?
Yes.
Mayor Daniels?
Yes.
Councilmember Campbell?
Yes.
Councilmember Fleming?
Yes.
Motion passes. We now move on to two items that are brought forward by Councilman Campbell. You have the floor.
Thank you. Well, there's two items that I'm sure they're not thrilling items for a lot of people here or a lot of people watching at home. However, I think we, obviously with the recall coming up in November, we don't know how that's going to go. A lot of people are very concerned about if it is successful, what happens to the city government. And I'm not sure if this should be in the rules or if this should be a separate policy. But I would like to have, people would like to know what the procedures are, what the timing is, what happens from the day that, if a recall is successful. And again, I'm not sure if, where it fits into our system, but I think people are very anxious as time is moving on to find out how this is all going to work.
Attorney Blum?
Mayor, this would be something that I would not recommend that you place in your rules of procedure. However, if there is a desire of the members of council for me to work with the clerk and set forth all of the parameters and kind of all of the situations that could occur, if that is the direction of council, we could do that in memo form or however council would like us to do that. But I do not recommend that you put them in the rules of procedure.
Councilman Slater?
I think that's probably a good idea with memo, but could we also get it on the webpage? That would be my suggestion.
Councilman Fleming?
I'm not in favor of putting anything on the webpage until this council has vetted it and we look at it in agreement. As a matter of fact, when I look at both paragraphs here in its totality here, and I don't know if we can do this or not, but I would prefer to have a closed session to discuss this. I don't know if we can, but I think there's too much at stake here to go off quickly and start putting stuff on the website until we vetted it and talked about it, the ramifications as a council. And if we can do that without violating the Opens Meeting Act or whatever, I'd like to see this done in a closed session because I think we do much better work as a council in deliberating than at least a study session.
Attorney Blum?
Any decisions would need to be made at an Open Meeting Act under the Open Meetings Act. So you couldn't make any decisions in a closed session. And we'll do whatever council directs us to do.
I guess I'm confused. Why would we need a closed? We're not determining what this process is. This process is a process. I mean, it's not. What we want to do has nothing to do with the facts of the matter of what's going to happen, and that's all. I think what people are looking for is what the law is, what process is, and I don't think our input, very honestly, is all that critical at this point. The rules are going to be what the rules are, if I understand it properly.
Attorney Blum, if you could give an overview of what the procedure will be, and then if you could give an overview of what the procedure will be if I don't get recalled.
Mayor, I'm not sure that I'm prepared to give that at this point in time because there are a lot of scenarios. There is some research that needs to be done. It involves some recall law. It also involves the rules. Again, there are scenarios whether the rules are amended, whether they stay the same. A lot of it is timing. It depends on when the results are certified by the Board of Canvassers, and that could trigger one or two different things depending on the timing of that. So there are a lot of scenarios that would need to be put forth, and I would appreciate the opportunity to have an opportunity to really think about that and set that forth in a memo at a minimum.
Let me just make sure. Councilman Fleming?
Yeah, my objection to this and directing this city attorney to do anything, also, this is a two-part request, and the second paragraph is talking about development of a city policy to address the use of internet, Facebook, Twitter, or any other electronic social media by elected officials of Troy based on current issues. I believe this policy would need to address the allowable content, design features, photos, use of city images, and titles of elected officials. The current city policy does not address the issues as mentioned. Again, this does not need to be part of the rules. So we really got two things here. What are we doing as far as explanation of the process to be followed in the event the mayor is recalled or not recalled? And secondly, included in this that we're talking about is this policy involving the media use by elected officials of Troy. So I don't want to get this all rolled together and direct the city attorney to be taking action on these two things. And I'd like to see, I'm fine to getting an opinion or a letter or something, but I'd like to see it before it's published, and I'm not sure it needs to go on the city website, but we need to talk about that.
Mayor Pro Tem McGinnis?
I thought we were just addressing them one at a time, so I was really only going to gear my comments towards the first one. But I think, obviously, we would want the legal department to have the time to put it together. I know just through snippets that it's things that you've been addressing and that you've been working on. But I think it would probably be better for the council, for the legal department as well, because I'm sure you may be fielding questions for the clerk's office as well, if there is just some sort of memo. And I would be hopeful that everyone could see that there are going to be different scenarios. So I don't know if it's going to be as clear cut as some people would like it, but having the opinion come from the legal department, whether it comes to us in some sort of confidential format, I don't know if that is what Councilman Fleming is looking for, but I think a memo is fine, so we have a starting point, and if there needs to be a discussion from that, we can. I don't know if the goal was really to create a discussion environment on this issue.
No.
Councilman Slater?
I also was looking at this as two separate issues, and I think part of the confusion, at least the emails that I get, are that I think there was something published that came from the city attorney and I think the city clerk office that was quoted in one of the newspapers, and I think about what the process would be, and I think if we could just get a memo, that would probably clear everything up, I think, probably, and if we want to go after that, that would be fine. But I remember reading something in the media that there was a quote from the city attorney and the city clerk that indicated what would happen, and maybe that was a misquote or something, I don't know, but I think this board would like to see something in writing.
I believe it said that we would need to do further research on it and analysis, so so we would appreciate the opportunity, I think, to do that.
Any other comments?
That's fine with me, and we don't need it tomorrow, and a memo form at this point is fine.